Hello and welcome to the Daily Atheist Morning Show. It is Wednesday, the 25th of March, 2020. And how you guys doing? Hump Day. It's Hump Day again already. Goodness. The week is going by fast. Not fast enough. I'm ready for Friday. I have got special guest I'm going to say this right, Vi La Bianca from Talk Heathen. I got it, yeah. See, I'm not as dumb as I look. Here we go. Let me bring you in. Good morning, Vi. How are you doing?
Hello, I am doing good. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Well, subjectively speaking, yes, I'm very. It's wonderful that you're here. I apologize for any technical difficulties. The chat people will report to us in just a moment. They've been actually eager to see you. I have to say, there's something about you and Eric. I don't know what it is. Whenever you guys are coming on the show, my Twitter blows up more, my Facebook blows up more. I got more I got like 7 subscribers just yesterday between the time I put your thing on that you were going to be here and this morning.
Wow, welcome to new people.
I know, and it was the same thing with Eric. Whenever Eric was on the show, it was blown. Eric, I posted in Facebook that he was going to be on the show, and they started talking about, oh, I love Eric. He's so wonderful. I mean, it was just like this rosy reception that people just don't normally get on my show. And then before this show here, I've got people in the chat. Some of them are a little, I want to say, rougher around the edges. Looking at you, Link. Looking at you, buddy. And even this morning, Link's going, man, I can't wait for V to get here, and they're all talking about you, just blowing up. It's an honor to have you on the show. If you don't mind, would you take a moment for those of you who don't know you, I don't know who they would be, and introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about you?
For sure. I am a relatively new resident of Austin. I moved here June of last year. I moved here for the ACA specifically after meeting a bunch of the lovely folks at the American Atheist Convention in Cincinnati back in 2019.
Really?
And they were jokingly like, you should come to Austin. If you're an atheist activist, that's where we all congregate. It's the atheist mecca, that whole thing. I was like, oh, that's a funny joke. That's really funny. I'd never moved to Texas, and here I am in Texas. And yeah, when I got there, I was expecting to be the person moving chairs around, doing dishes, because we have amazing volunteers at the community who really do keep it running behind the scenes and are there every day to really make things run smoothly. Not these days. It's closed as a non-essential business, unfortunately.
Of course.
So we're going to definitely be like finding ways to still stream and get you pre-recorded content and everything. But yeah. But anyway, I kind of dipped my toe into the whole hosting realm. I think I did nonprofits first, and then Secular Sexuality was looking for a co-host. So I jumped on that show, and we're still going. It's been about 7 months with that show. And then I made an appearance on AXP. I made an appearance on Talk Heathen. And then Eric was kind of like, hey, because branding, do you want to just be associated with one show versus the other? And I was like, yeah, can I choose Talk Heathen? Is that possible? He's like, yes, you can. So that was, about 6 months ago, and we're in the middle of season 4 right now, which is exciting.
Yeah.
And then I also helped jumpstart GB3, which is the 3rd iteration of Godless Bitches with Jenna Belk and Jen Aldridge. I know Jen was also on the show, I think, last week. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah. She's been a lot of fun. She's been a lot of fun even before I met her. Because she has a language issue.
She is very colorful in her expressions.
Yes, and we always, people ask, can I cuss? And I'm like, yeah, you can cuss. But when I first started the show, I really asked people to kind of keep it down because of some people are trying to listen at work. It's a morning show, and we actually really do have people listening at work. But we are grown-ups. It is the internet, not radio. So, let one out every now and then. But it came up about Jen, and we're like, actually what happened was I would come on and I'd tell the guests, that they say, can I cuss? And I'd be like, well, not like you just learned how. You know, not like it's new to you. And then
Right.
finally somebody in the chat said, "Are you talking about Jen?" But I had her on the show and we talked about it. It was a lot of fun. She was just wonderful. All you people have just been wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to have her back too.
Yeah.
I have to say though, the morning times are a little hard for some people.
I will admit it was very difficult to get out of bed today, which is why I've got this ginormous mug of coffee.
I understand. Well, you know, I moved it back an hour, and so this is the easy time, unless you're on Saturdays. And Saturday's show starts 2 hours later, but even still, and it's mostly sci-fi. So, you know, link. Oh, I got a couple things. First of all, I want to mention that. All right, now we're pushing the limits of my memory here. I have a new viewer who started with me, I think last week or the week before, Epileptic Skeptic. I believe your name is Stephanie. I got that right. Because I'm Wile E. Coyote, super genius. I got that right. Miss Stephanie wanted you to know that she was actually more excited than Link was that you were here. So, okay. So there's a competition. They're agreeing right now not to fight about who is the most excited to see. I'm not kidding.
All right. Hello, Link and Stephanie.
Yes, epileptic. It is Epileptic Skeptic. I'm pretty sure I got that right.
Epileptic Skeptic.
Yes.
I like that. That rhymes.
So let me ask you real quick. How long have you been an atheist? Have you always been an atheist, or are you a cradle atheist, or?
Yeah, I'd say I'm reaching the age where I can walk by myself. So I started questioning things in undergrad. I went to a very Christian conservative university.
Oh.
Well, they billed themselves as the liberal Christian university because they allowed screenings of Harry Potter on Fridays.
Oh.
But so we were looked down on by Liberty and Bob Jones and all that for sure. But yeah, I started questioning my faith at that point, just because they were requiring a certain number of Bible classes and theology classes, and they kept bringing up these really good questions that these brilliant professors who had studied their entire lives couldn't answer.
Right.
And so that kind of got me started, and that was back in 2014. And then around 2016, I was finally like, you know what, I'm done with this. This is not working for me anymore. So yeah, about 4 years of actually calling myself an atheist, but before that, I was all over the map, right? I went from super evangelical Christian conservative, which is how I grew up, to the more progressive, liberal, God loves everybody, all paths lead to heaven kind of Christian.
Gotcha.
And then I dabbled in some Eastern religions. I dabbled in paganism. I still call myself an atheist witch because of the fun, ritualistic and historical elements of that I hold very dear to me.
Really?
So yeah, that gets a little pushback from the rest of the community, let me tell you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I can see some of that. But then you happened upon an American Atheist Convention.
Yeah,
in
well,
2019?
I had studied. I had been on the pursuit of finding all those places where I wasn't yet questioning, because you can question the God concept, right? But then you start realizing that other things also need to be looked at harder. Other just ways of looking at the world that have been baked into my faith. Right. And so I was on this journey to explore as much as possible and hear as many different stories and voices as possible. And I found Atheist YouTube. So the Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen and Mr. Atheist and Hugo and Jake now, Hannah and Jake. So there are different. There was that for like a good year and a half, 2 years, and my partner at the time was like, "Why are you watching all of these angry people? It must be so stressful to like wake up first thing in the morning and hear people yelling." And I was like, "It's relaxing to me. I feel seen. I feel heard." But yeah, I was living in Ohio at the time for a very brief period of time. We don't talk about the Ohio year, but but I realized the American Atheist Convention was going to be in Cincinnati. I was living in Columbus. It's like, fine, I'll do it. I had started a small atheist activist group, kind of a grassroots watchdog organization for local politics and local laws that were being passed. So I was getting into the more political end of that. And prior, I had been in Portland, Oregon, where there was quite a lot of to-do around the 2015-2016 portion of the election cycle. So I went from, riot gear in the streets to organizing a grassroots movement to now talking into a camera. So different kinds of activism, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting to hear. There's so many different stories about how people got into the atheism and what moved them to be into the atheism. Now there's the atheist story and the what made me an activist story. And now you're an activist. You found a home in Austin, of all places, Texas. What's your plan now? You gonna ride the Talk Heathen channel for a while and see how far you guys can build it?
Yeah, right now it's very exciting. I've moved all over. I've lived in Philadelphia. I lived in London overseas. I moved to Portland. I lived in Columbus for a hot second. Now I'm here. And it's kind of like every few years I get that travel itch to be like, oh, wanderlust. I need to go see what's out in the great beyond. But Austin feels different, just because I feel like there's been this very intense love and community and just passion here, where it's really allowing me to grow and kind of explore that side a little bit more. So yeah, I'll be here for a little while. I've got work to do.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. With Talk Heathen, I really enjoy. It's kind of got a whole different tone than the atheist experience, in my opinion. I mean, it's the same studio and everything, right? Forgive me for not watching more than I have.
Oh no, yeah.
You know how it is.
Cycle out, the AXP people cycle in. It's basically the same exact setup, just different screen in the background.
Yeah. But the tone seems to be entirely different. Eric, of course, has got such an emotional tone to him. Well, I mean, I guess you could call Matt Dillahunty emotional too.
Yeah, they run the gamut. Matt's here.
Yeah, I've been watching him play some Doom. Well, I started to, but he's, I don't want to watch him too much because I haven't played that Doom yet. But yeah, he's a lot of fun. Of course, that's part of the deal. As a content creator, I don't know what your experience is, because like you said, you walk in, you sit down, you talk, you go away.
Right.
But me, I have to build all this and do all this and schedule all this and get all these people. So I really don't have this mountain of available time to sit around watching other content creators. And I really feel like I don't do my friends justice. Atheist Pastor, Jen's Little Corner, Math Pig, The Tavern, all those people, I don't give them enough time because I'm usually so busy watching my stuff. They're like, hey, did you watch my cool video where I blew up this guy, in this thing? I'm like, no, man, I'm sorry. I didn't, dude. I didn't. But did you know I've been fighting with this program for days now and it's killing my stream?
Man. I like it. Yeah, no, I honestly feel the same way. I feel bad. I've almost entirely stopped watching other ACA shows. Really? As terrible as that sounds, the ones I'm not on, and I don't, unless I'm like beating myself up for a particularly bad segment and like trying to get better at it, then I don't really watch the shows that I'm on either. So the only times I'll watch a full show now of Talk Heathen is when Eric is hosting a guest, and then I'll be in the studio audience live tweeting the whole thing from our Twitter account, because I'm also addicted to Twitter. If anybody's interested in knowing anything about me, probably too much about me,
follow you on Twitter.
The place to go.
Gotcha. Twitter is this. It's like I know how to use it, sort of. I just don't know how to keep track of stuff. If somebody, I really don't. If there's notifications, I go in there and I look, are they talking about me? It says somebody replied to your thing. So I click on it and it's like somebody said Bob. And I'm like, all right, what'd they say Bob to? Which thing are they? I have no idea how it works. I do my best. I'm an old guy. I get an excuse, though. Right? It's not my Facebook. I got Facebook. I got it down.
I'm right there with you with like TikTok.
Right.
Apparently that's the new thing, and I feel old. I'm like, I don't care. I don't understand it. Why would you do this? Like,
Yeah.
give me Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and I'm fine.
What I mean, I'm sure there are probably some things that you can do on TikTok that you can't do with Instagram, but can't you do videos on Instagram? I mean, why do we need these other ones when we already have this one? You know?
I don't know. I think it's mostly just, and this is my marketing and journalism background coming into play for a second, but I think it's mostly just demographically. Like, if you have a video, depending on where you put that, Facebook Live, YouTube, Instagram, or something like TikTok, you're going to get very different audiences looking at it. So more than anything, I think it's just breaking us down into categories to market better to us.
That's probably a good idea. Because I mean, let's take that one step further. What can you do on Instagram that you can't do on Twitter? You can tweet pictures and you can hashtag them. What can you can even do videos. What can you do on Instagram? So why do we need Instagram? Ergo, why do we need TikTok? Why can't you just but then again, like you say, some people
platform that everyone uses and
well, I think it's kind of like like you said, the younger group gets these new programs, so they create the new program that does the same thing as the old program, but that allows them to separate out who is who and who is who, I guess.
Exactly. It's like we're all just building tree houses, like no people under this age allowed. Which is like, it's the same tree house, guys. Come on.
Yeah. Well, you know, I see it in the chat. I want to say hi to Kristen, best name ever. Nerdy Rodent is here, and Critical Crippled Dave. Some other people have been showing up. It's wonderful. Dave says you'd be great on TikTok. I'm presuming he's talking about you.
I don't know. I'm fairly reserved. I rarely get animated, at least when other people are watching.
Well, when Dave speaks, I usually listen. Again, I still don't know who he's talking about, me or you. He may be talking about both of us. He told me, because I had a Twitter account. I used it every now and then, but I have had a lot less knowledge of how to use it than, and he's the one who got me to use it. Got me using Twitter, got me doing those things, and now I use it, and my education in Twitter's gone along because I use it. Now if he's telling me I should use TikTok, I might go, well, wait a second, why would I? If he says so, maybe I really should look into it, because I got, we're not just streaming to YouTube, we're streaming to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch at the same time right now.
Oh wow! Hello, other audiences. I didn't realize we're watching.
Yes, so we're doing all those things right now. I'm trying to build audiences over there as naively as I can.
No, that's actually probably a very good strategy. I don't think you'll be affected by this at all because your content tends to, again, be a morning show that everybody can listen to. But Secular Sexuality, for example, their ad revenue is null, and it's pretty much the viewership is depressed a lot just because we have the word sexuality in it. We tend to talk about very kind of quote unquote risque, like PG-13 type stuff. So YouTube is like, nope, kids can't watch this, so we're going to put this in a back corner and let you gather dust a little bit. So finding other ways to do that, especially with Twitch, is a good idea.
Oh yeah. Also, I want to say hi to Daniel Peterson, and I almost want to not say hi just because he said, "What about me?" But hi, Neil. Yeah. Hi, Neil. Neil, the 604 Atheist, is in the chat. Yeah. He's, I got to be honest. Neil, Critical Cripple, Neil, Gaytheist, who I haven't seen in a long time. He's a Patreon, but I stepped out and stopped hosting for a little while. And whenever I did, he's like, "I'm out," and he's just never come back. he's still a patron, but he never. So he was a Chris fan, I guess. Those people made my show. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't. They're just. It's like you. The community that I found in this atheist community, this part of the atheist community, has been wonderful. They've been very helpful and uplifting to help me get my show going forward. They've been great. Oh yeah, no, it's really a rising tide lifts all boats kind of situation. I feel like most people that I've met here are on that same page where I help you, you help me, and we all kind of grow together. Yeah. Brainbug, yes, you are fairly new to the morning show. It's been going on for a few months. I think you've been here a couple of weeks. And Daniel Peterson, I've had a few people show up this morning who like to say hi. So obviously I can sit here and just say hi. So Miss V, my chat says hello to you. They love you very much.
Hello, chat. I love you too.
It's like an unusual between you and Eric. I don't know. There's this love thing coming through the chat. It's all icky. I don't want to get it on me.
Love ring, everybody.
Yeah, like a Care Bears.
I know it's basically, and that's accurate.
Yep. I mean, yeah. Oh, alias fake name is there. You know, I got a lot. John Anthony is showing up. People are coming out of the woodwork. Good morning, guys. I think those wonderful friends I was talking about, they're over running another stream right now because they're jerks and they know that I'm streaming now, and yet they started a stream and they're jerks. But they'll start coming over here if they get bored. So they're like, "Why didn't you invite me on the show? Because you was running a stream over there, jerk."
Don't mess with my airtime.
That's right. Who you love, man? Who you love? Epileptic Skeptic says she's been meaning to call into secular sexuality, but she keeps chickening out.
Well, I have other ways around that. Of course, we would love to have you actually on air talking with us, but we also have a voice mailbox, and that's 512-666-0275. And if you call that, then you'll get a voicemail, and you can leave a voicemail for us so that we can play it on air and answer your question without you having to worry about being, on the spot in the moment.
Okay, just to confirm, that was 501-666-0275, right?
512.
51. Oh, damn it. Bad Chris. 512. I was trying to be a good Chris. I get to do the 666 again. No, I'm not. I'm okay. I'll be okay. 512-666-0275.
That's correct.
That's the number.
That's the number. And that's open to anybody.
There you go. So no reason to check out Epileptic Skeptic. You can call and leave a voicemail. In case any of you guys, if you have any more questions for V, go ahead and pop them in there, and I'll get them over to them. Yep. That's wonderful. Let me just check real quick. Got all these things going on. Nerdy rodent. And Sandy the Sane has shown up. We played Dungeons and Dragons. Are you into? Have you ever done Dungeons and Dragons?
I have been. I was.
Or one of the people that beat up the Dungeons and Dragons people?
Oh no, I was one who read Tolkien and looked down on any other kind of fantasy at all. I was one of those snobs.
Gotcha. Okay, well here I do have a question for you. Link Thomas asked this earlier. Is V your full name? V La Bianca. Yes,
V Rose La Bianca. But the Rosebud seems pretentious to add, so yes, V La Bianca is my full name.
Gotcha. What's unusual, the V part, So yeah.
Now, I like it.
Didn't you say something about you enjoying sci-fi? Was it you who was going to be on a sci-fi Saturday?
Yes. Hey, if you ever want me back on, I am a pretty hardcore Trekkie.
Tell your lies to someone else. That's wonderful. I'm a Trekkie.
I will admit that Deep Space Nine and Enterprise have yet to get all the way through them. They seem to be a little bit of a slog so far, but I've got friends who I trust who are pushing me forward on those. But yeah, I grew up with the original series and Next Gen, and I've been binging Discovery and Picard and Voyager over the last few years. So
okay, we'll go there. We can.
Hey, why not? Let's do it.
I love me some Star Trek. I am Star Trek. When I was a little kid, like 4 or 5, my mom made me a gold Kirk shirt complete with the little braids. Now, my favorite Star Trek so far is Deep Space Nine. But the first 2 seasons are builders, and you kind of got to get through them. By season 4, it's just wonderful, and it's wonderful. It's just, I love the show. It's wonderful. Enterprise, though, I don't know who told you about that. I'm having a hard time getting through it. Me and the wife. My wife is not a sci-fi person, and I brought her through. She had seen The Next Generation, so she was open to it. She liked it. We watched Deep Space Nine. She's a Niner now. She loves Deep Space Nine. Voyager, she liked the Voyager because she loves a strong woman character.
Janeway.
Enterprise is hard to get through. We're getting through it.
is the, I mean, the concept is super cool that it's pre-OTS, TOS, and kind of where humans are first discovering space travel and all that cool stuff. But I don't know, that opener song is just there's a lot of cringe.
There's, and then, you know, all right, man, I gotta tell you, they had, all right, so with Archer's timeline, there should have been the Romulan War. They should have had not this Xindi time thing where they come back and it's a time war and you bring in this race of Xindi. Who the hell are the Xindi? We've never heard about them before. So it's another alternate timeline. I get that. I understand the premise now. It's an alternate timeline. Fine. Why? There's so much there in the regular Star Wars universe. They could have had a lot of action with the Romulan Wars, but no. And then I was sitting there going, you know, they're doing, instead of like most Trek, they're doing 2-episode arcs, 3-episode arcs, 4-episode arcs. You know, you can't just sit down and watch a one-off episode. You got to watch 3 or 4 episodes to understand this one story. And I was telling my brother, because we were watching it together, I was like, this ain't going to last. Won't last. 4 seasons. That's all they got.
Yeah. There are a couple different areas in Trek history that just have not been touched, and it's strange to me. The Romulan Wars, the Dominion War, these really huge concepts just have been referenced but never touched, and I'm curious about why that is. I was watching Jessie Gender. I don't know if you know her channel at all.
I don't.
But if you're interested in Star Trek and like super nerdy analysis of the shows and everything, she's the place to go.
Gender, like male, female gender? Is that how you spell it? Okay. All right, cool. Jessie Gender.
She definitely broke down kind of why modern Trek is not as popular with a lot of Trekkies, and it is because of those longer story arcs and the concept that it's not an episodic sit down, have a problem, have a resolution, next week, same thing. So I agree. I think that probably Enterprise was trying to get into that realm a little bit, and then they just went full blown with Discovery.
Yeah. Well, I did enjoy part of Discovery. I say there was parts of it I liked. Of course, I love the graphics. The graphics are wonderful, you know. And then
it's beautifully shot.
Yeah. So that was great. Some of that. But then I was getting a little. The Klingon thing rubbed me again. I'm like, why? Why do you got to keep changing? Then I hear they fix that in season 2. They explain it, and I get it. If you can explain it and just, I mean, we could right now go back and start a whole new Star Trek using just the canon we know, the Kirk-Picard canon. That's what Kirk and Picard timeline. Kirk, Picard, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and work in that timeline. You could do an Enterprise series all over again, brand new, and not touch. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's sort of like they're talking about doing with the Aliens. They're going to keep 1 and 2, pretend 3 and 4 never happened, and start a new movie.
I just don't understand why they do that. They did the same thing with the new Star Wars franchise, where they're just like, oh, we're just gonna give J.J. Abrams this. And
well, they're asking about asking, I guess, you in the chat about Star Wars. I recently watched, like the day before yesterday, watched the last Star Wars movie, and I guess it's good to know. Good to have seen it. It was 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. The first 10 minutes was freaking awesome. I thought it was awesome, and then my internet blew out, and I was like, oh man! So I waited another day. I started watching it again, expecting this awesomeness. It gets through the Snoke, or not the Snoke part, but the first part with Kylo and the Emperor, and then it cuts to Rey and them going around on the planet, and it's all goofy, like slapstick. You know, stormtroopers flying off over here, and it's just kind of goofy, weird, stupid for a long time. And then it had moments of Star Wars-esque seriousness. I mean, Star Wars has always had this kind of, it's serious, but it's got whimsical moments. But the whimsical moments are never really just slapstick stupid. Like, anyway, I had a really hard time watching it.
No, confession, I'm not a Star Wars fan. Okay. I've watched most of them. It just isn't quite my jam. I did watch the final one because I have watched everything in this new saga. And I felt bad. I was laughing the whole time. Just like, I was like, oh, this writing is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Sorry, J.J. Abrams. You do so good with other stuff, but this just...
Well, you know, I thought he did a great job with the first couple of Star Trek movies, 2009, 2000, whichever.
The Kelvin timeline made it. yeah, it changed the direction of Star Trek, I think, a lot.
Well,
But
it made it.
in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. Kind of, Star Trek is a lot of thoughtful philosophy, kind of Star Trek sci-fi. Star Wars is run and gun action. So what I believe they did was they took our Star Trek that in 2009 Kelvin and they made it run and gun like more Star Wars-ish, and it was a lot of fun. The last movie, there were parts of it I really liked. I liked the actress who they painted white. I don't know her name.
I forget her name, but I know who you're talking about.
I really enjoy her. She's played in a lot of diverse characters, and I like that somebody like her gets those opportunities. I think that's freaking wonderful. But there was just things in the story that there's a motorcycle. You got a motorcycle 500 years in the future, and it actually works. Yeah. it really works. And then not that all right, so now I can get that the captain of the ship that had it enjoyed motorcycles, and he had a motorcycle, but that ship had been crashed there for 100+ years.
Right. Where exactly are they fueling that thing?
And they just, stuff like that just kind of bothered me. And then they're going to use VHF to destroy this. VHF radio is all they need to destroy this.
Right.
But
I mean, to be fair, that was a nice moment, but thinking back, you're like, oh, that didn't make any sense.
It really was cool as a run and gun kind of, if you just want to set a few things aside and you go along the music, I dig the music, and it played back to the music in the first movie whenever he'd stolen the thing. I really did enjoy it. I have to say, I critique these things, but I love them.
Oh yeah, and you can do both. I think there's a lot of not necessarily toxicity. That's a strong word. There is that too, but I think a lot of people are kind of this or that. And so if you critique something, you're not a true fan, or like you lose some cred. But honestly, you can. I mean, I love West Wing. Not exactly sci-fi, but I'm on my 4th time or 5th time watching the series now that I'm in social distancing mode. I'm like, I just need something to take my mind off it. And that show is very problematic if you look at it from a modern lens, because it was put out in the 90s, I think. Okay. But yeah, I absolutely love it. I'm a hardcore fan, but also, you get to a point where you're like, yeah, I can see how this could have been better.
Well, I've never seen The West Wing. I have seen clips. There's one point where the president, I guess, really gets after this religious.
Oh yeah, no, that one has made its rounds. That, and then there's a debate in, I think, season 7 where one of the candidates is like defending the term liberal, and people thought it was like a real clip of a real politician for a very long time.
I think I saw that. Was it the guy who Jimmy Smits, or the guy who plays Jimmy Smith? Yeah. I don't know if that's the actor's name or the character's name. Is that the actor's name?
The actor, yeah.
Anyway, Jimmy Smith, yeah. So that kind of went around. Before we go too far off, have you ever seen? Was it Boston Public? Is that what it's called?
I do not recognize that name.
I think it had William Shatner and Jerry Ryan in it. At one point, he shoots a guy in the leg. It's about open carry, and so I thought maybe you'd seen that one. That's a pretty good one. Made the rounds too.
Okay.
Yeah. Not that I'm all about shooting people. It's just, it was funny. Boston Legal, I think. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what I said. I'm not sure. Have you been on Neil's show? Neil the 604 Atheist?
I have been on Neil's show. That was so much fun.
Yeah, so Neil was. I stumbled into this sphere. I happened to look online for live shows. I ran into Neil's live show, and he had guests on. I was like, hey, and he actually started sending me my first guest. If it weren't for Neil, I probably wouldn't have Richard Carrier was on his show, I think. Most of the big guests I got. Marie Delafont. I don't know if you know who she is.
Oh, I love Marie. We text, yeah.
Yeah, Dave Warnock. Both of them came, I met them through Neil's deconversion stories over there. Matter of fact, Marie Delafont is going to be on the show next Friday. She's going to...
Oh, fun. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I know she's releasing a brand new podcast. It's been going on for a little while, but it's a reboot of an old podcast with Cass, I believe his name was. But yeah, she's awesome.
I can't think of the name of it.
Everybody's Autonomous.
Autonomous. The old one was Everybody's Asexual or something like that, wasn't it?
Everybody's Agnostic.
Maybe it was something like that. Yeah.
I think it was more religious focus, and now she's moving into like sexuality and relationships and all of that. So
I got you. Yeah, she was a lot of fun. And then of course Dave. Dave was one of the things I'll always remember about Dave is when I met Dave, he had just woke up. I've been running this show for a while, and I've never had actually, to a certain point, I hadn't had. One of the beauties of StreamYard was that it was easy to use, very little control, very easy to use. And his was the I think the only one where we started the show, and he had it open in a browser in the background, and we were all going through, and we couldn't hear because it was a lot of fun. Dave was a lot of fun. I wish the best with him, but of course, just like everything else, I haven't been able to keep up. There's an event though that I was invited to that's happening today with Marie Delafont and Dave Warnock.
Oh yes, I was invited to that as well. It's a live stream, I think, on Facebook or something.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not, without knowing more about, I got to be honest, there's parts of this thing I don't know what the hell's going on. I was invited, I think, as a viewer. Mm-hmm. I believe as a viewer. I don't think it was a kind of an invite, but you never know. I've been on many different shows, and so it was an event. I'm going to go. I'm going to encourage other people to go and watch and follow their story. He has just been very inspirational, for one, considering what he's going through. And I don't really know where he's at right now. I don't know how that's going. But they just came out of a trip for, let's see, down to the beach or somewhere. They went and had a really good time just before the whole coronavirus thing blew up.
Oh yeah.
So they had a good little trip and got to.
There's a blow up dinosaur costume that made an appearance, I believe.
So let me ask you, how do you like doing the talk part of the show where you actually talk to people live on the air? And you're kind of, what happens, for those who don't know, V and Eric host Talk Heathen most of the time. Occasionally other people sit in. People will call in and you will debate them. Is that essentially, they ask you questions, but it really kind of turns into a debate kind of situation. How does that work for you? How you like it?
It's an interesting experience. Most of my life, I have had massive phone anxiety. Oh. So I hate calling people. I hate answering the phone. It just, for some reason, makes me really anxious. And I'm constantly going over a script. How do I get out of this call? What do I say when I need to leave? I can't just be like, I'm about to have a panic attack. Bye. So it was really interesting to be a couple months in and suddenly realize, wait a minute, this is technically just a phone call, except it's being filmed live in front of over 2,000 live viewers. Studio audience. And like, we're talking about really intense, heavy topics and getting super personal. And so it was weird to realize that up until that point, and honestly after, like, it didn't faze me. So I'm not sure exactly why that is, but I love it. I would never, ever have imagined that I could like something like this. I've always been a behind the camera type of person. Mm-hmm. I used to write musicals in undergrad, and I was always the one to write the book, to write the lyrics, and then to stand behind the camera and film as the actors performed, right? So I was never, ever somebody who felt like they could or should be the focus of anything. So coming into that realization that not only can I do it, and do it maybe not very well, but well enough, and that people actually want to see me do more of it, is just mind-blowing to me. Like, I'll constantly just sit back and be like, what is my life? What even is this?
I get that, but I have to say, in the admittedly briefer than it should have been opportunities in which I've watched you, I mean, you're very personable. You've had a great personality, and you seem like you know what you're talking about. I don't know how much you know about the Bible, but you're learning. Apparently, you're in a great group of people to learn from.
Oh yes, yeah. I know more about it than I don't want to come off as pretentious, because I feel like that's a line that a lot of us walk a little bit, is like, how much do you brag about your knowledge of this subject before it becomes okay? B, come on. But no, I have a pretty extensive knowledge of the Bible and interpretation and church fathers and different denominations and all of that. I learned Koine Greek in undergrad, so I was translating scripture myself. And yeah, it's a passion for me. I'm fascinated by it, especially the history of evolving doctrine and church fathers and Augustine and Aquinas and all of these men who you don't hear about in church or in these very basic kind of theology 101 classes. You'll hear the name every once in a while, but you don't understand exactly how much these random people influenced what we think of today as Christianity. In fact, I remember while I was on my way out and still trying to reconcile everything, I went out to coffee with someone I considered to be a mentor spiritually, someone who knew a lot more than I did, or so I thought. And I was talking about how I didn't necessarily view the God of the Bible as male, right? I'm like, I don't see the reason to be hung up on that. I don't think God has a gender. And she was kind of taken aback by that. She's like, but that's how God is presented in the Bible, and don't you think that should be enough to let us know? And I was like, well, no. In fact, if you think about how Augustine interpreted this, and she goes, who's Augustine? And I was like, oh, okay. That was kind of a final nail in the coffin, because the version of Christianity that I've been taught growing up and had shared with her was very much based on the kind of stoic Christianity that Augustine kind of promoted back then. And to not know who the person was kind of that death knell for me.
Right. Well, I want to say the older I've gotten, the more I realize how institutions that I used to think were massive and couldn't, they were, I don't know, it's the respect I had for things that when I was young I no longer have respect for. I just don't see them as being as imposing. The government now, all of a sudden, I used to think it was this shining representation of uprightedness and that there was corruption, but most of the government was not corrupt, and it was, there was, and that illusion is gone.
Yeah.
Completely gone. I never had any fantasies about the Catholic Church. I was never Catholic. I remember being a kid and joking about them doing their thing. It's always, I hate to say it, it's a joke. It's not a joke. But there, sometimes, like Chris Hitchens says, sometimes, you have to joke about something to get it out in the open.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a lot of that. We have a question from the chat for you.
Sure.
Do you enjoy watching animated shows? And are there any that you've really enjoyed recently?
Oh, good question. I have found, so there's this really kind of obscure Netflix animated show that only got one season, and I'm kind of heartbroken about it. Tuca and Birdie.
Never heard of it.
It's really good. It's kind of, I also love BoJack Horseman. Right. That show blows me away. I finished rewatching it after the rest of season 6 came out. So it's finished now. It's a full storyline. I highly recommend you go watch it unless you are struggling with things like depression or addiction, because they hit hard. Right. And not everybody should probably watch it just because it's just no punches pulled. Gotcha. But I absolutely love it. And then Tuca and Birdie was kind of along the same lines, except it was very centralized around how women move through the world. So it was very much about social anxiety and female friendships and dating and dealing with the concept of abuse. And it was really well done and really funny. So those are the two off the top of my head that I can think of.
Gotcha. Okay. I had another chat. excuse me. Another question for you here. Let me see if I can find it again. Who is your favorite atheist character in a major TV show? Do you have one like
I like
Dexter
these
or
questions.
The House? I think House would probably be mine.
I like House. I have not seen enough of it to be able to say my favorite.
Well, I can't get through past season 6 with House. I can't. I've never seen season 6 past.
You're 6 seasons ahead of me.
Gotcha.
Gosh, that's a really good question. I'd have to say, I don't know. There are a lot of characters in the West Wing that I don't think would classify themselves as atheists, but they definitely hold a particular disdain for religion.
Okay.
So President Bartlett, forever my president, at least right now. Chris, I know you're talking about, imagining the government as a shining beacon of people trying to do the right thing. And honestly, Aaron Sorkin has done more, for my opinion, of the U.S. government than the actual government has.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say the characters on the West Wing pretty much sum up my approach. Not necessarily all religious people or Christians are bad and should be dismissed, but also, just keep the religion part out of what we do.
Right. Epileptic Skeptic asks, have you ever seen Steven Universe?
You know what? I have not. The only reason is that I am a terrible and pretentious hipster. And as soon as people start talking about a show and start recommending it to me, it loses all interest. So I'm like, oh, if everybody likes this, then I don't. But I have heard glowing reviews of that show. So, who knows? This social quarantine situation might turn me into somebody who watches Steven Universe.
Gotcha. I wondered about that too. Again, I was thinking that, with all everybody staying at home, my show would be blowing up. But again, like I said, there's the counter streams. But then also, I'm figuring a lot of folk are sleeping. If they're working from home now.
Yeah, so. I think you might be one of the only YouTube shows that I can think of that might suffer a little bit of a hit if this is their commute show or the show they listen to while making coffee before work.
Yeah, and there's been the notion tossed around that, why don't I just move it back or, do a noon show instead. But the morning show was quiet when everything was going. Everybody talked about how unique it was. It was very cool and blah, 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 blah. And 6 months from now, so I don't want to be going, all right, I'm ready to go back to my morning show. And then everybody and their dogs got a morning show because, you know what I mean? Or at least.
No, I think you've got a really unique and interesting thing here for sure.
Yeah. Well, actually, I want to try to copy you guys to a degree and get a phone line figured out how to do some phone calls and get calls in. Nice. As we've already discussed, I'm a little overwhelmed with the tech side of it, running it one-on-one. But I've got some co-hosts who help. I'd like to find other people who co-host on the regular, and that'll allow me to kind of spend more time doing that. And then that'll allow me to get some calls going. And to be honest, part of the reason why I do, when I have the opportunity, watch Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience is because I'm sort of prepping for when I do that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
How do you deal with these people? Watch Matt Dillahunty. Fuck you. I'm not listening. If you deny science and call me on a cell phone, I'm bouncing your ass right now. I've seen him do that.
Oh, yeah. I think it's interesting to see different people take the different tracks they do with callers, because the same caller could call in. I know we have a couple repeat callers who will call into just about any of the shows that are live and take viewers.
Oh, really?
And depending on the host that day, they get a completely different reception, right? So it's really depending on who's on this side of the line to see how those conversations go. But hey, I say go for it. It's a lot of fun.
I see somebody post calls via Discord. I barely know how to use Discord. I would say most people don't know how to use Discord. So I want a phone number. I hate to say it. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I love people who love that sort of thing, but I want a phone number that they can call. Now, if they're talking about that, I can do a phone number that people can call and it works through Discord that I can pump into my system. hell yeah, let's do that. But all right, we've got this running thing going on. I've been trying to ignore it, but it's not going to die. So I got to say it in the chat. Okay, so, and I know we're back to the sci-fi. Pardon me. In Star Wars, they do the Force. They've got the Force. So a lot of people see it as science fantasy instead of science fiction. Science fiction is fiction based on science. They also have spaceships that go faster than the speed of light. Therefore, it is science fiction. Done. Now, do they do spells and do they run around doing little things? It's not magic. It's not magic like we know in the consensitive form, the contemporary form of magic or fantasy. It's not. It's a very specific thing. It's science fiction. Star Wars, Star Trek has the exact same thing. They have telepaths. They have people who can do telekinesis. Same thing. You can't. That's all it is telepathy and telekinesis. A little bit of future seeing. They have people who've flashed and seen the future in Star Trek. So that's not the real hill to die on, guys. In the chat about what's fantasy and what's fiction. I'm just saying.
Well, I think, yeah, that's a good point. I think especially in The Last Jedi, I think is the one that I'm thinking of, the way they described the Force as this natural phenomenon that you could tap into. Honestly did remind me a lot of the teachings that I had absorbed during my Wiccan days. As
I get that.
You know, magic is not like supernatural granted by demons. It's a natural force that you somehow tap into.
But we all have energy in our bodies. That's how we work. We work the electronic devices like the microwave, yet you can't use a broom handle because it picks up on the energy. I mean, we have energy in our brains. These are not fantasy things. That's all I'm saying.
Science we don't understand yet. That's what I'll say.
There you go. Very good. Very good. Yeah. So there was just a little bit of I didn't want bloodshed in my chat.
Gotta address those hard hitting questions for sure.
No flouncing. Yes, you got a hard answer question. Hi, Kelly Sellers. Good morning. Nice to see you there. Nice to see you. And so yeah. So we got all that covered. I got that out the way. Love you all. Love each other. I'm just saying, you know how the internet is.
Oh yes. We brought up. We basically incited this.
Right.
To be fair.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. Kristen, what I mean is, you can't push a button on a microwave. One of those touchscreen buttons. You can't touch them. They don't work with devices. You have to have. I mean, with just any piece of plastic, you can't reach up and work your microwave buttons with. That's all I'm talking about. I'm just saying that we have, it's not magic. That's all I mean. Yes, no fighting, people. Well, I don't know. Fighting drives ratings. Get after it, folks. We're going to have the MMA in the chat. What'd they die over? Well, somebody said it was fantasy. Yeah, so.
Our worst fantasy. Yeah, that's a.
I know, so we went there. Yeah, so all the things that you've got going on, it's been a very big change for you.
Yeah.
Do you and Eric, are y'all going to start doing some kind of, because y'all are working from home now, or I say y'all are working from home. You are working from Eric's home studio. I don't know y'all's situation. I'm not trying to presume your situation. All I'm saying is you're working from home. Or his home studio. Does that change the nature of Talk Heathen? And is it more likely that you guys are going to start possibly doing, or even Atheist Experience? Is it more likely you're going to start doing shows like ours, where they're digital and people are working from home just because of the COVID thing?
Yes, actually, the last Talk Heathen we streamed from this studio. For me, it's easier to come to a studio that is only inhabited by one or two people who I know have also been socially isolating, as opposed to going to a public place with a whole lot of people. I feel like it's a little bit smarter and safer. Plus, we're oh God, I hate every single term that describes what we do, influencer, whatever. So I feel like it's important we model best practices right now and stream from our various homes whenever possible. But yeah, last week's Talk Heathen was streamed from here. We had our crew in the ACA, like managing everything remotely, and it went beautifully and very smoothly. So shout out to them.
I caught a part of that.
Yeah, in the future, it's going to be interesting because now it's officially closed, so even our crew can't go in. So we're going to have to find ways to keep filming because we're not going to stop by any means. It might end up being more of a pre-recorded situation for a couple weeks. If we can't find a way to link phones into the situation, we may do the whole Discord conversation angle. But yeah, I think for the next couple of weeks at least, we're going to be finding interesting and fun ways to keep the shows going.
Right. Yeah, I keep wanting to throw my skills out there and go, if you guys need any help, of course you got plenty of nerds, I'm sure. And yet I opened the show with, damn it, my system ain't working. I'm having problems. I can't figure this out. So I don't know if I'm the best person.
No, that's a requirement. You have to be upset at your technology for me to take you seriously as a YouTuber. Honestly, if you're like everything's fine, I'm like, are you for real? But the second you have any kind of technology issues, you get legit.
Yeah, it has been, well, for you guys though, it really could. There's a way to pump the phone number to your, you may have to get a different phone number for these few episodes, a Google Voice phone number, and pump it into somebody. And then you'd only be able to have one person on the line at a time.
Right.
And then pump them through. They'd be able to, one person answer over here, and then the other person just, really, you do it on the computer, hit Google, because it's Google Voice, allow this sound through. Those kind of things. It's doable. Obviously, I haven't done it yet. If my system were working, I'd already have a phone. But for those of you who know, I switched over to Stream Elements, and OBS has just been a jerk the whole time. I don't know if we're going to have sound or we're not going to have sound. Blah 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 blah. So if it weren't for me having to stop and fight this OBS problem, I'd already have the phone number because I've already got the Google Voice number and everything.
Nice.
I just don't have right now enough of me to go around. And actually, but 3 days a week right now, currently I have a regular co-host. And so I've thought about going ahead and doing the number on those days and letting the co-host engage with them.
Yeah, that's a good plan. I feel like it is very tricky to try and do that all on your own because you need at least a little bit of quality assurance, I think, like in terms of screening calls and making sure that you're getting ones that are interesting and useful and not we've had our share of pros who just show up and kind of yell out insensitive epithets and then hang up. Yeah, it's been interesting.
Well, I guess my viewership doesn't probably draw that many kind of crazy folk yet, whether on our side of the fence crazy. Yeah, I'm hoping that's a good problem to have. Yeah, right, that's exactly. How do you? I've heard that what people will try to do is run up and, like, if you're doing a live stream or something, try to run up and play a song, so you'll get a DMCA or a license strike from YouTube. They'll try to play it on your live stream, and even a few seconds will cause a problem. Now, it does take a little bit of time for that to get in the system, and I've thought about if I had any, I know how to go in and actually edit that out of my video, even though it's already up in the cloud.
Interesting. I have not heard that before. That makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, so that's one of, or so they'll call in. And when you let them on the line, then they'll start playing a song that they'll try to get you a copyright strike.
Interesting. Let's not popularize that concept too much.
Thank you. I'm sorry I shouldn't have mentioned it. Yeah, sometimes I don't think. One of those times.
Oh my goodness, I can definitely see that happening though, for sure.
Yeah, so that's the direction I would like to see my show head. Was really kind of in the direction copied after your show. But the Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen tend to be more, I want to use the word serious. What I want to have a morning show. You've listened to morning shows?
Yeah.
Usually a couple of guys, maybe a woman on there, and they're talking and laughing. I prefer woman-heavy morning shows. Because guys, I hear guys' voice. Never mind, that's crazy complicated stuff. Anyway, morning shows are funny. With people, and they have guests come on. That's what I'm trying to build,
Yeah, that's really good. I like that idea.
Yeah, if I try to make a call-in show, then it may not become as funny. It may become more serious. I don't know. I got a long road to hoe. Figure out how to make
I think it's all about the kind of persona that you present as well. I think when we first started Talk Heathen, I say I'm relatively new, but I've been regaled by stories of days past And a lot of the time people would call into Talk Heathen thinking it was exactly the same as AXP. And it would be very abrasive and very aggressive. And over time, as they realize that, oh, these people are more empathetic, they are more willing to listen to deconversion stories as opposed to just argue about whether God exists, we ended up getting a different audience. So we'll still get like last week I went off last week. I was mad. Okay. For like one of the first times, I actually just was like, no, no, you're not getting away with this.
I think somebody asked about that in the chat. I think it was Epileptic Skeptic mentioned, she's like, did you see this thing that V did? And I was like, no, I didn't see it all.
Yeah, I believe it's called beast mode, but I don't think you can apply that label to yourself.
Well, we'll call you beast mode. Go ahead. You went beast mode. You went full blown beast mode on somebody. Can you give me a rundown on what happened? Because I'm sorry I didn't see the show. I didn't see all of it. I did catch tiny bits of it.
That is okay. No, what ended up happening was we had one caller call in, and his argument for why we weren't agreeing with him was that we didn't understand the Bible when we had read it as Christians. Or as atheists, because it's veiled to us. And I hear that all the time, though. Like, it's one of the most common arguments is, oh, you just don't understand, or oh, you didn't get the right information. But for some reason that day, it like really like irked me, and I kind of was like, no, that's absolutely untrue. I did this. Like, I understand the Bible better than most of the people who call in, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
And then the next guy calls in saying that the coronavirus is not only prophesied in Revelation and a proof of the end times, but also it is justified punishment for how terrible we are as human beings. And I just was like, no. I think I scared Eric a little bit.
Did you verbally club him like a baby harp seal? I love baby harp seals. But
I mean, I got as close as I have. I've never gone full mat, but maybe half mat at this point.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, all right. Here's one of my deals. This is something I say often in my videos. I don't know if I've told you this yet. I do this series called the Evil God Monster of Abraham series, and I'm going through the Bible chapter by chapter. All right, let me say that slower. The Evil God Monster of Abraham. So I never stop long enough. Okay, so the Evil God Monster. So I'm going through that. And oftentimes there's these things like the begets in the Old Testament. In Genesis, Bob begets Steve, begets, blah, blah, blah. Well, Christians nowadays try to say that the begets actually mean it's a sentence. When you translate it into the ancient Hebrew, actually means that it's like the Son of God is going to come forgive all of man who is bad or something like that, right? They're really trying to shoehorn that in there. So I'm like,
wow, that's a new one.
Right. So part of it is like, so this guy says, one of the names translated means the people are sick. Who names their kid the people are sick? Hey, the people are sick. Go play around with unintended consequences and tell them what lost man has been doing. It's just stupid, right? And then I said, and this is something, a recurring theme, and I keep saying this in my Evil God Monster of Abraham series, is that if you need to know the ancient text to understand it, or if there's some kind of hidden meaning, it's all trash. It's trash to the billions of people who've come and gone. If this is the Word of God, a perfect, loving, omniscient, omnipotent God, this should be understandable to everybody, no matter what language it's in. So this notion that there's this hidden meaning that we as atheists aren't understanding because we don't, it's what would you say, veiled to us? That's just nonsense. If it's not something that everybody can understand, it's trash. If you can only understand it by going back and reading the ancient Hebrew, it's trash. If you can only understand the message by taking the first word from, it's trash, because billions of people who have been on this planet are never going to hear it. So it's just trash.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. As I like to say, God desperately needed an editor if his goal was to be clear and coherent to the general population. So
Yeah.
there's a side project I'm playing around with, which is an editor edits the Bible. Because my full-time job is as an editor. It's what my master's is in. So I was like,
really?
maybe I'll just go through and edit it. Like, this doesn't make sense, and this is unclear, and you should probably introduce this character sooner. Like, Jesus is the main character. He doesn't show up for the first however many hundreds and hundreds of pages. Maybe introduce him sooner. Just treat it like a really badly written novel.
Right. Yeah, I think it would be. Well, actually, as I'm going through Genesis, there's actually two stories stuck together. Like the story of Noah, it's really two different stories stuck together. And I think it's, how do you, it's all wrong. As an editor, you would have a hell of it. I actually did that in my episode 8 of the Evil God Monster of Abraham. I got to say it again. I went through, it's actually chapter 8 of the Bible, and I went and took out, I said, let's look, why does it say all the animals got on the boat? And then down here it says all the animals got on the boat. Why does it say this? Well, what's happening is two different stories. So I literally ripped the chapter in half, took all these scriptures over here, all these scriptures over here, and it made two complete coherent stories. It should have been nonsense.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, and then at that point I realized, well, see, at 5, 6, and 7 chapters, I'd been going, I think it was 7 whenever I did it. I'd been going, you know what, this is a waste of time. Look, here it tells you the animals got on the boat. Here it tells you they got on the boat. Here it says they did this. Here it says this. Why is it doing that? When he could have been telling you to boil your water, to do these good, important things. It's just a waste of time. And then it was in that one chapter, so I don't know how far I was into it, where I was like, oh, snap, it's two different stories going on. And I ripped them apart. Now, lack of time has me going back and just redoing all those videos or doing an appendum to them and pointing out that these are, the reason why is just two completely different stories. You, somebody with all this background in biblical, all your background in this knowledge of this stuff, you should have a lot of fun with that. Just imagine trying to edit that. You wouldn't have any hair.
Oh, yeah. At that point, it would just be like, let's pull it all out. Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Well, you know what? It has been an hour. I want to thank you for joining me. You are wonderful. You're a lot of fun. Thank you for the chat war. You know, there's another one going on over there. They're debating other topics that we just ain't got time for right now. Right. So I'm just going to, there's the they them thing going on, and I've really tried to avoid it because I'm old and learning, and you just have been awesome and forgiven me for any slip I may have made. People don't know in the huh?
You're good. You're good, man.
See, so they're in the chat. They're trying to figure it out, and to be honest, I respect it. I try my best to follow it. I don't understand it enough to explain it to them. They can go figure it out on their own. They're all grown-ups.
Yeah, just in case you are wondering, I do go by they, them, because I am non-binary, which basically just means I don't feel like categories that have been widely accepted are applicable to me.
Right. So if somebody accidentally refers to you as a she, you don't get all up in their face, though, because most people don't realize that. And that's kind of the thing. Somebody in the chat refers to you as a she, and other people are like, hey, it's a they, them. And they're like, oh, wait, I didn't know. And it's just a mess. Maybe I should have done that in the thing and put they, them for your name. That made it... You know, I mean, really, afterwards. I've seen other shows do that to me. I try to be respectful. My people try to be respectful, I'm sure. They're just... some people don't understand. That's all.
Oh, yeah, no, and that's totally fine. I understand it's a new concept for a lot of people, and I don't exactly present as androgynous all the time, so I totally get it. But I also appreciate the shout outs from people who are, you know, being up there and kind of making sure the people know. So
that they know.
Thank you guys, and no sweat to anybody else.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to, you know, that really is. I've seen it before in these things, and it's within my power underneath your name or by your name to put a they there. I'll try to remember to do that for people who are non-standard. That's not disrespectful to say?
I also would go with non-standard. I mean, I like that too.
No, I didn't mean the non-binary part. I understand that. I meant non-standard in their way of applying the labels to themselves. I'm trying to walk a line without insulting anybody.
It's really hard to insult me. I get insulted by theists every week.
Right.
water off a duck's back, so you're good.
They're bigger. Again, this is not a hill to die on for me. But so I'm gonna let you go. Thank you for being such a wonderful guest. You have been a lot of fun. Even we didn't have any technical difficulties. They didn't complain once.
No, this went very smoothly. I'm impressed.
I know. I didn't do any scene switching though. So anyway, thank you to everybody who showed up in the chat. I know Link Thomas is like, you've lost me. Don't worry, Link. You'll get over it. Don't worry. You guys are awesome. Epileptic Skeptic, thank you for being in the chat and having such wonderful questions. And Neil the 604 Atheist, you guys are all wonderful. And Kelly Sellers, I don't think I've ever seen you before. So new stalker, probably one of your stalkers, really.
Well, it is possible.
And then of course Daniel Peterson. We have a lot of people, and I can't forget Kristen. She has been wonderful. Thank you all for being on the show.
Thank you, Kristen, and everybody.
She is just, she's just the best, the bee's knees.
She's like the networker here. She's just like pulling all these people together and making connections. It's very impressive.
Absolutely. Part of the, all right, we got a couple of minutes. I'm presuming you have a couple. Eric has his problems with emotional, I don't know how to say it. Depression. He has depression issues. I don't have those deep of issues, but I have those same problems. Even when things are good, I can sit here and go, man, this just sucks. This I don't know why I'm doing this. Why am I doing all this? It's just too much effort. Nobody gives a damn. Nobody shows up. What do I care about? And then I got people like Kristen who are there going, man, you're the best. I love what you do. Keep doing it every day. My wife, Kristen, people like that who believe in me when I don't believe in myself are the only reason why I keep going. Some days it's harder. I've actually thinking about, I may even take off part of next week, just to sit here and go, what's wrong with the show? Something is not right, but it's because of people like that keep it all going. And thank you guys for doing what you do down there. Y'all are like a model for me. So thank you for being so awesome.
Oh my goodness. It's ridiculously fun to be a part of it.
Oh, I don't know when I'll talk to Eric again, but the last time Eric was on my show, somebody said something in the chat and I missed it at the time, but Link Thomas, the guy who's actually here, he may have forgotten that he said it. He wanted me to shout out to Eric and say, thank you for all he does. So I believe I covered that. I know I'm just as surprised as you guys that I remembered that. So you guys are awesome. Thank you all. Thank you, V. I am just bad. I'm just horrible. You can taser me through the internet. There's a button.
Honestly, I answered it both because it's such a common thing.
I even went, all right, because I wasn't sure. I'm gonna out myself here. I wasn't sure, so I went online and I watched one of your shows, and I watched Eric refer to you specifically, so I'd know whether to call you V or Vi. And then I screwed it up. You guys are all awesome. Thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
Awesome.